think it's time to talk about Donny van der Beek again. He was ignored by Solskjaer after signing him, largely. He was ignored by Ralf Rangnick. And then the guy that made him a player, everyone was sure to find a place for him. And he's also been ignored by him as well. I think Van der Beek was, and we're seeing a lot of this week with Casemiro, by the way. It's the not featuring sort of saviour bias, I think. I'm not sure what the word is for that. Basically, anyone who's not playing at the moment is the answer to why we're bad, and if they were playing, we wouldn't be bad. I think Donny van der Beek has sort of benefited from not playing and seen his stock rise, where everyone else that has played has seen their stock fall. Where when he has played, he's never really managed to do anything that impressed. We're in his third season at United, and he's managed only 20 games in total for both United and Everton when he went on loan. Not good enough for a player that hopes to break back into any sort of team. But what went wrong? You got to take it all the way back to his first season for United, and it was actually full of chances. He had 19 games by Solskjaer in the Premier League, playing over 500 minutes. Alongside this, he played 17 more times, 17 more appearances in the cup competitions, and he failed to please across the board in those. He only managed 1 goal, 2 assists. That's not necessarily how you judge a player on that sort of ability. It was more the impact he was able to impart in those games. And it was minimal. He never... A lot of the people are going to say, he didn't... how many 90 minutes did he get? The problem is when he did start, he was knackered after 60 minutes and he had to come off. He didn't look like he had the stamina to last full 90 minutes in the games. The midfield was the weakest area of our team as well. And I'm sure any manager, if they had someone with the ability and to follow the instructions that they wanted, they would have walked into that team. Van der Beek couldn't break in. Now, we know that Eredivisie is a weaker league in the Premier League, and there's been some wonderful players that have managed to make the step up into the Premier League from Eredivisie, and I'm hoping there's even more still that are going to do it. The big negative for me, though, with Donny is he just wasn't good enough when he played for us. He looked soft and he looked unfit. And in English football, you can get away with being a little bit less technical. You better be fit and you better be physical. And Donny not being that, you can get away with being a smaller player with good technique. But you're going to have the stamina to be able to cut about the place. That's why you saw the likes of David Silva, Kevin De Bruyne do bits, not big lads. Very good technical footballers that go, Kevin De Bruyne's numbers are mental. To be a consistent player at Manchester United, you're going to have to consistently perform at every single opportunity that you get. And he didn't do this. There's not once did he grasp hold of a first team place and say, this is mine, and you have to take it away from me. There aren't any memorable moments from Donny van der Beek's time at Manchester United. It was largely anonymous. Contrast that to Christian Eriksen. And there's been a lot of moments in his short time at the club already. They play the same position. Offensively and defensively, he was poor. Per 90 minutes, he averaged just 0.4 dribbles a game and made 0.2 key passes. Alongside that, he only made 0.03 clearances per game and only 0.03 interceptions per game on average. Statistically, the only positive aspect was clearances, of which he made 1.6 every game on average. And it's just not good enough. Another reason which might explain the absence is managers' preference for other players. Solskjaer, Rangnick, and Ten Hag have always preferred Scott McTominay over Donny van der Beek. And at the moment, it looks like Ten Hag's preferring Scott McTominay over Casemiro. There's a reason Scott McTominay has been favoured over those. His work rate is probably the most outstanding attribute of him. And I would love to see the day Manchester United don't have to pick someone based on work rate alone. But the position we're in at the moment, that's the reality of where we are and who we are. And even though McTominay has maybe had the best form of his career in the 4 wins we've just had, it was still enough to keep Donny van de Beek easily away from the starting 11. McTominay had better statistics in every factor in the 2021 season per 90. He had a better key pass. Right, McTominay's passing makes me want to break stuff. But it was more than twice as effective in terms of key passes than Donny van de Beek, 0.5 versus 0.2. He had more passes on average, 45 to 15. And this is per 90 before anyone starts going, yeah, but he played more. It's on average per 90. So it's balanced out versus the minutes you're on the pitch. And he even had a better pass success rate, 88 versus 86. Now, McTominay is no Pirlo. I think that goes without saying. He's outperformed Donny van de Beek in every single passing metric that season. So it was no surprise when you had the added defensive capabilities and physicalities that McTominay brings to the table that he was always going to be favoured over Donny van de Beek. And Fred, for his sins, offers strong defensive numbers. And if you're not going to be a team that's dominating with the ball, you better be a team that can at least deal without having a lot of it. So Scott and Fred were 2 obvious candidates to play. Now, you could argue that Donny was maybe brought in to play more of a role that would maybe replace an aging Juan Mata. But he wasn't getting played either. And maybe he was unfortunate that Bruno was at the club. But even the likes of Juan Mata and actually Nemanja Matic both outperformed him in his first season. And they both played similar sort of numbers to Donny. It was a bad start. But when a poor Juan Mata matched or outdoes you throughout the course of the season, questions are going to be asked. Now, essentially a different story under Erik ten Hag. While playing for Ajax and under Erik ten Hag, Donny van de Beek was a different player. Played higher up the pitch, was integral to Ajax's success both in the league and the run that they had in the Champions League. He actually only missed 2 games under ten Hag that season. That was because of a hamstring injury. You compare that to the Donny van de Beek today, he's lucky to play a couple of minutes. This season, he played 12 minutes against Brighton, and then 4 against Brentford, and then 3 against Liverpool. That was the last we saw of him. Now, I know you're all going to say he's injured. The last report that I can find of him was that on the 29th of September, he returned to training last Friday, the Friday of the international break. So he trained for at least a week. Wasn't even on the bench at weekend. He can play all across midfield. I think he's better as an 8 in a team that's going to have the ball or a 10 in a team more likely to not have a lot of it. He said on the show that I did with him and Rio that he can play in the 6. And I think he's a good all-rounder. I think he's got good technical ability. He played 110 games under Ten Hag and he got 32 goals and 29 assists, which is a good return. For 8 or even for a 10, they're good numbers. And Ajax were actually rampant with Donny van de Beek in that role. And they could have made a Champions League final with him in that role if it wasn't for that comeback from Spurs. He did have the talent. But I don't know what it is since he's come to England that Manchester United and even at Everton, he just hasn't cut it. So what happens now with him? Well, United are starting to string together, City aside, some decent results. And there were some decent performances. I think the City have got the potential to do what they just did to us to anyone, in all honesty. And it's looking more and more like, if reports are to be believed, that even Ten Hag sees him as surplus to requirements. When Casemiro can't currently get a start in this team, what hope is there for Donny van de Beek? You're asking for maybe 3 players to be injured. If Bruno's out, I think he'd probably just try Christian Eriksen in the 10. If Christian Eriksen is out, I think he'll probably go with Fred. He might even go with McTominay if Casemiro's been able to establish himself as the 6, which is what I expect. I don't see where minutes come from for Donny van der Beek. I actually think that there's a very good, strong chance you see more of Zidane Iqbal than you do of Donny van der Beek. Now, Ten Hag's probably going to start rotating his squad this month, which means you might get the opportunity to see Donny van der Beek impress for Manchester United. We've got 9 games in this month, which is 2 a week. And Ten Hag is going to have to stretch that squad. He cannot play the same 11 for all of those games. Against the likes of Ammonia and Sheriff, there's going to be rotations. Now, it's whether or not he decides to use this to get match fitness for him, or even if he gives him a little bit of a cameo in this. When you've allowed the likes of James Garner to go, keeping all of Donny van der Beek and not using him could be a problem for Ten Hag, especially if James Garner goes and tears it up at Everton. Only time is going to tell whether or not Donny is able to reach the heights that we saw from him at Ajax. It hasn't happened in England just yet. But what do you think? Think there's any chance of us seeing that? Can Ten Hag, if anyone, get it out of him? Or do you think it's game over now for Donny? Do you think he'll be shipped off in January? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.